Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 29th of August, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So in a bit of sad news, we have potentially what is the last What's New in ETH 2 newsletter from Ben Edgington. And this newsletter has been going on for quite a while now. Definitely my favorite one for keeping up with Ethereum. I've given it a bunch of shout outs on the Refuel before. But as the merge is only, I guess like just over a couple of weeks away now, it seems that Ben is going to be sunsetting this What's New in ETH 2 kind of newsletter. Potentially. I mean, he does mention that he will not be going anywhere, of course. He'll do an occasional special edition and might be upping his Twitter game a bit, but he's still going to remain as the product manager for Teku, and he's going to be focusing much more ruthlessly on his book, as he mentions here, which is a book all about ETH2, book all about, I guess, like what Ethereum will be post-merge. So yeah, I mean, you can check out the latest edition for all the news. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But just a little bit of a bittersweet ending here, because Ben has, as I said, been like an amazing source of information for all things ETH2. But as we're now going to be essentially going into the merge, and then once the merge is done, there's really nothing else kind of like happening on quote-unquote ETH2, right? The ETH2 has kind of like been delivered with the merge. I mean, the terminology kind of got a little bit changed over time, and there's obviously still a lot happening, but Ben's kind of goal was to just highlight all of the stuff happening right up until the merge, and he's done that, and he's done that amazingly. So I'm looking forward to him finishing his book, of course, and to see the occasional special edition, because I always think those newsletters are great. But yeah, just wanted to highlight this, and congrats to Ben for all the work that he's done. You, sir, deserve the break now, definitely. But as he said, he's still going to be product manager at Teku, which is a consensus layer client, and we'll be doing the occasional special edition, which I definitely look forward to. All right, so Danny Ryan is out with the latest Finalized edition, which is number 37 here. So basically, this is all about the merge. So there's the merge data challenge, and basically reminding people that to upgrade their nodes for the merge. If you're a solo staker, be sure to upgrade both your consensus layer and execution layer clients, and also be sure to make sure that your validators are talking to the kind of execution layer client, because of the fact of the matter is you can't outsource that anymore. So you definitely need to be running your own local one, and there's a few other things you need to do as well. You can go check out the merge readiness checklist, which you can just Google for, which will kind of run you through it all. But yeah, I mean, this is very short. I just wanted to kind of highlight it for you guys. You can go check this out in the YouTube description below. All right, so there's been a bit of discussion around Ethereum nodes and where they're hosted, and how, a lot of them are hosted in cloud service providers, and not many of them are hosted locally, and all these sorts of things. And there was kind of like this tweet that got put out that from Maggie here, who said, who highlighted this issue and said, where is the dialogue on this? And I kind of thought to myself, well, I mean, this has been talked about for quite a while now, and Julian here basically said the same thing, where he says the dialogue has been going on since 2018. We have been aware of these problems before they materialized, and fixes to address them are actively worked on and on the roadmap. Look for Verkle trees, the Verge, and stateless Ethereum and Portal Network. And yeah, I mean, I kind of like had the same thoughts when I first saw this tweet. I'm like, look, I actually don't think that it's that huge of a deal, or that big of a deal, that a lot of nodes are on these service providers, because, and these are nodes, not validators. Like, I'm talking like just a full node, whether that be kind of like currently a beacon node, or a full ETH1 node, or post merge, a full node which is made up of an execution layer client and a consensus layer client. If it's just the node itself, if it's not a validator as well, I actually don't think it's a huge deal. And the reason why is because if for example, Amazon, I don't know, you can see here Amazon on the pie chart here accounts for like 52% of hosted nodes. If Amazon basically said, we're going to kick off all the nodes off the network, well, there's still over 50% of the hosted nodes, and then all the other nodes still on the network that you can just resync on your local machine, right? It's not like Amazon could censor you from being able to control your validator, or shut the validators down, which would affect the actual network. You could easily just spin up a full node again on your local machine. So I don't actually think it's a huge issue. The issue becomes when, as time goes on, as the Ethereum chain gets larger and larger and becomes harder and harder to to store and sync because it just keeps growing. That's the issues that are being tackled here with Verkle trees, with stateless Ethereum, and the Portal network. Those are the things that have been worked on for quite a while now and are part of the longer term Ethereum roadmap. So I really just hate when people say, where's the dialogue on this? I mean, as Julian says, yeah, since 2018, basically, we've been talking about this. And even before that, people were talking about it. And solutions are being worked on. It's just that it's all bleeding edge stuff, right? It's not going to happen overnight. There are things that take priority, such as the move to proof of stake and things like dank sharding, but these other things aren't even ready from what I know. I think Verkle trees is, look, I don't think it's ready, but I think it's pretty close. Stateless Ethereum is still a bit up in the air about which direction we want to take, but it's definitely not at the beginning or anything. And Portal Network is still being worked on as well, and I'm not sure on the current status of all of them, but they're definitely coming along very, very nicely here. So from that point of view, I just wanted to kind of, I guess, clarify that there, because I don't think it's the devil that nodes are hosted on providers like this instead of locally. Obviously, I always recommend people to run their nodes locally if you can. It's not very hardware intensive. You can actually run an Ethereum full node on a Raspberry Pi these days, so it's really not that hardware intensive. I think the most intensive part is the storage space that you need. So an SSD with at least, for future proofing, I would say 2 terabytes of storage. But even that is very easy to come by these days. Like, SSD storage has come down considerably, and you don't need one of the fancy SSDs either. You can just use a basic one from my experience. So, from that point of view, I don't think it would be difficult. And I think difficult to run a full node locally. And I've done it plenty of times as well, and I've never had any difficulties. But, the reason for using cloud providers is definitely varied, right? It's not just for end users, also for developers that want to kind of like use this, and developers that are on the go, that have a laptop, that don't want to have their laptop on all the time, don't have a good connection all the time. They host these things in the cloud, and that's totally fine. But if you're, home and you've got your computer on and it's on 24/7 anyway, you may as well run a node to support the network as well. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that just because nodes run in the cloud, it's not the same thing as validators running in the cloud. Now, there was another kind of bit of drama that came out where this cloud service provider that you can see on the chart here, Hetzner Online, which is, I believe, a German hosting provider, basically said that they do not allow anything blockchain, crypto related to run on their hardware or run on their cloud. Now, Hetzner accounts for 16% or 16.9% of cloud or hosted nodes here, which is the second largest behind Amazon, but they only account for 9 to 10% of total nodes, right? So it's not 16.9% of total nodes, 16.9% of hosted nodes, and then about 9 to 10% of total nodes. But because of that, those people running there can do many things now. They can, now that they've been given warning as well, they could keep running it on that infrastructure until they get booted off. They can go spin up another one. They can migrate from Hetzner to Amazon, to Oracle, to Google, to wherever else, right? Or they can run it locally as well. So it's not really that big of a deal. I really think that, and a lot of the times these things will have service agreements that even if they kick you off, they'll allow you to take your data with you, so it's not like you're just thrown out onto the street. And also, this only applies to Hetzner-owned infrastructure. If you are co-located, which means you have your own infrastructure in there and you're just using their data center with your own infrastructure, then this doesn't apply. You can still use that just fine. So it's more nuanced than the headline of Hetzner is kicking off all these Ethereum validators and they're censoring and all this sorts of stuff. I don't even think it has to do with censorship, to be honest. I think it has to do with the fact that it seems like they don't want to be associated with crypto because of the energy use and stuff like that. It was a weird kind of thing. It was said on Twitter, which linked to a post on Reddit from the Hetzner support team, and it was a bit weird there. And then I put out this tweet by saying, it doesn't mean that just because there's full nodes in the cloud doesn't mean that there's validators or proof of stake validators running alongside them. There can or can't be. And even if there is, those validators can just change their providers, because even though you can't withdraw from staking right now, you can just run you can shut down your validator on Hetzner, go run it somewhere else, and just take your keys with you. Your keys should be stored locally anyway. They shouldn't be stored on the cloud. Definitely not. You don't want to be storing your keys and your seed phrase and everything on the cloud there. In kind of like plain text or anything, but you can take that with you as well, especially if they're giving you a heads up about it, which is I guess like nice. But generally, yes, we should aim to get as many people or as many nodes off these cloud providers as possible and onto local machines. But in order to do that, we need to make it easier to run nodes than it currently is, so that anyone can, like even on a laptop, they can run a full node, whether that be through a light client or otherwise. in order to further decentralize the Ethereum network and rectify this issue here. All right, so speaking of, I guess, node infrastructure, Light Clients here shared something on Twitter that there is a one-click tool from Nethermind to run execution layer / consensus layer combos post-merge, and this tool is called Sedge. I can't remember if I've highlighted this tool before. I may or may not have, but basically you can go check this out on GitHub. It is still in beta. It is not in production yet, but as I say here, it should be stable enough with only some minor issues, and it hasn't been audited yet. But basically, it's a one-click setup tool for proof-of-stake network chain validators. Currently, Sedge is designed primarily for solo stakers and testnet devs of the Beacon chain and the merge. Sedge generates Docker Compose scripts for the entire on-premise validator setup based on the chosen client. So if you are someone who loves to tinker with this stuff, definitely go check this out. I'll share this link in the YouTube description below for you to go check it out and potentially run it yourselves. All right, so last thing here when it comes to, I guess, like Ethereum core development. So Jeffrey Scholes here shared an interesting little tidbit where he says, why did the ETH devs invent Solidity rather than use an existing language? It all comes down to compilation size. This screenshot shows that the hello world in C compiles to 33 kilobytes, but you see hello world in Solidity is only 336 bytes. Maybe Solidity sucks, but the existing alternatives aren't viable. Now, why does this matter? Because storing things on the Ethereum chain is expensive, right? We have this gas limit on the network, and we charge for the opcodes, and the opcodes have different costs associated with them, different gas costs associated with them, and depending on how much you use is how much a transaction will cost on the network. So obviously you want that cost to be as minimal as possible. So that is a major reason why Solidity was invented rather than using existing languages. I mean, you can see here, this is 100 times improvement. I mean, 336 bytes to 33 kilobytes, that's 100x, right? If you for just the Hello World program, which is the most basic program, well, one of the most basic programs I guess you can write here. Oh wow, no. And then Jeffrey corrected himself saying it's only 168 bytes. So it's actually a 200x improvement, which is just crazy, right? So people will often hate on Solidity and say that it's a poor language or it's a bad language or it could be better. But at the end of the day, there is a reason why it's still used. There's a reason why it's still popular. There's a reason why it was invented instead of using existing languages. Now, is Solidity the best we can do? No. Is Solidity, ossified? No. It's still getting improved all the time. There is an entire team, I believe, at the Ethereum Foundation that works on Solidity, not to mention all the open source developers who add value to Solidity as well, not to mention all the developers that work with Solidity that kind of like bolster the network effect as well. So I just wanted to highlight that because I'm sure you've seen people shitting on Solidity a lot of the time, and that's not to say that people can't make better languages or anything like that. But for something that is resource constrained, which is what Ethereum is, you need a language that supports that. Whereas, maybe at these layer 2s, something like a Starkware with Cairo, it's a bit different. But, programming languages, it's all network effect at the end of the day. And for people to want to adopt a new one takes a lot of push. I think there was no choice when it came to Ethereum. You had to use Solidity. There is other languages like Viper out now, but Solidity just has such an extreme network effect, not just on Ethereum, but like on all EVM networks, including the layer 2s, the layer 1s, the side chains, and its network effect just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I don't expect that to slow down anytime soon, and there is always good reasons why things get invented. Like Solidity was not invented just to inconvenience devs, just because Ethereum wanted to be different and wanted to use a different language. It was invented for a very specific purpose, and the major point of that purpose was the compilation size, or was the resource constraints that Ethereum layer 1 has. All right, just another reminder here that details are coming into focus for the Ethereum mainnet merge call, which will be happening around 7/15th on the Ethereum Foundation YouTube channel, which will be hosted by Bankless, myself, and ETHStaker, with a Pope painting party and a Jonathan Mann song. Watch the timing at bordell.wtf for the merge. So I believe the timing is still pretty accurate here. It's still scheduled to happen around September 15th here. I think the hours kind of change from time to time, but there's not been a drastic shift here. Now, as I said, there's just over 2 weeks until the merge. This could still change. Like, it's funny because the hash rate is kind of very steady right now. Obviously, no new miners are going to come online. The price also hasn't gone up, so there's not going to be any miners coming online for that reason. The price is pretty much in crab action, as we like to call it. But it remains to be seen how many miners drop off before the merge. I don't expect many of them to drop off. I expect a lot of them to just keep mining right up until the merge happens, and then maybe they'll just kind of go to another network and see what they can do there. They can go to Ethereum Classic, they can go to a few other coins. I personally don't think that's going to be very profitable, but they're going to try. And I actually think there's a large part of the mining network that doesn't think the merge is going to happen still. They really do are still convinced that the merge isn't happening at all. And I wonder what's going to happen when the merge transition happens and their miners stop working. Like, it just doesn't mine anymore. They're not going to be stuck on an old chain, but they're not going to be able to mine anything. Like, their full node will upgrade to kind of, I guess, like, well, we'll kick in the TTD and then there'll be that changeover. But if they're not running a consensus node or anything like that, it should just stop working. Like, it should just basically it should just error out. Like, they shouldn't do anything unless there's a proof of work network that has been continued on from there and they're participating in that. So I wonder what their reaction is going to be. They're like, why is my miner broken? I'm going to be monitoring a few of the mining channels, like the subreddit Ether Mining and some of the YouTube channels out there, to see if anyone comments and complains and says, hey, what happened to my miners? Why can't I mine Ethereum anymore? Because I do think there are people like that, believe it or not. So that'll be funny to kind of see what you play out. But yeah, I'll keep you guys up to date on the timing around the mainnet merge. I'm sure if it changes dramatically, you'll see it on Twitter. But it seems right now it's to still be a go for September 15th. All right, so I came across this new layer 2 today, a new optimistic rollup layer 2 called Specular. So they announced themselves at this conference that's happening in, I believe, San Francisco right now. And they're calling themselves the first EVM native optimistic rollup. So Specular provides stronger security and decentralization properties than existing EVM equivalent optimistic rollups, or at least that's what they're claiming. Now, this is very, very new. First time I'm hearing of them. They basically go into a description of what makes them different in this little thread here, and they also have a white paper. I just saw this before, so I haven't actually dug too deep myself, but it's always good to see new rollups being developed on Ethereum. Like, you guys know my kind of thesis and view here. I want to see many more layer 2s, many more rollups, and I want to see much less layer 1s, because I do believe that layer 1s at this point in time are kind of like pointless. We already have enough of them. Let's build more layer 2s. Let's experiment there. And it seems that is coming into focus very nicely with Specular, and there's a bunch of others, coming online. I mean, even, I know WorldCoin cops a lot of shit, but they're a layer 2 as well. Like, they're building an optimistic rollup, even though, it's questionable how sound their tech is, but, or kind of like their idea is, but it's still a layer 2. And I'm sure we're going to see more and more. You guys know my thinking around this too. I think the general, I guess, market for funding things is like 6 to 12 months behind, and just the general kind of, I guess, like, narratives are 6 to 12 months behind, or at least popular narratives. So I think in the next, maybe, towards the end of the year, early next year, especially with the advent of proto-dank sharding and L2s becoming extremely cheap, I think we're going to see an explosion in them. But at the end of the day, there's not going to be a lot of winners. There's going to be a handful of big winners with probably a long tail of smaller ones that maybe eventually just fade into irrelevancy. But that's just true for anything, not just layer 2s. It's true for layer 1s. It's true for apps. It's true for anything you can think of at the end of the day. Like 95% plus easily of things in crypto fail because there's just so many things happening, and it doesn't matter what layer of the stack, doesn't matter if it's at the application layer. The same rule applies. There can only be a handful of winners for a multitude of different reasons. I mean, if you had to list out all the variables that go into creating a successful business, not just in crypto, just generally, the list would be absolutely huge. Like, there are so many variables that are both in control, out of control. I mean, just thinking about the major ones that I look at, I mean, the major one I look at is team. Obviously, you need a strong, competent team to deliver a working product. But the second major one is just having product market fit to begin with, because it doesn't matter how strong a team is. If the product is shit, then it's irrelevant how strong the team is. But in saying that, if there is a product that is really good and could have product market fit, but the team can't execute on that, well, it's the same kind of story there. So I think the two major things you really do need is a strong team and just a strong product market fit. Like, you need a product that will actually get product market fit and not just something that is being built that doesn't appeal to anyone, right? And this is funny because sometimes there'll be products that get built and they're just too early. Like, say you build it and then 10 years later, you build it, doesn't take off, and then 10 years later it takes off. It's because it's too early. Maybe the infrastructure isn't there. Like, look at a lot of the things like that happened with the internet. There are a lot of things that got built way too early because the infrastructure wasn't there. Video streaming was a very big one, where YouTube came along in, 2004, 2005, when the technology was actually there. We had broadband. Like, YouTube wouldn't really work on dial-up, right? I mean, I don't think it would work at all on dial-up. And we had broadband. It was still very early, but as the internet scaled out with the hardware, so did things like video streaming, and they got more popular. But video streaming was still experimented with in the 90s. It just didn't take off very much. And same with smartphones. Smartphones needed ubiquitous Wi-Fi networks and cellular networks and good cellular networks in order to do everything, and GPS as well. That's a huge part of it. And there was all other manner of technology that went into it. Smartphones really took off with the first iPhone in 2006, I believe. But even then, like, it didn't really take off until the 2010s, but it had been worked on since the 90s, even since before then. I remember, I think, I don't know if it was IBM or Microsoft. One of those big companies tried to come out with one really early on, I believe like late 90s, early 2000s. Didn't take off at all because the infrastructure was not there. Same is true for crypto. I think that there were a lot of early layer 2s that didn't really take off, both because they didn't really work practically, but because they were too early. But now they're not early anymore, and they work practically, like rollups. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of these layer 2s come online. But as I said, not all of them will succeed, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't try at the end of the day. All right, so speaking of layer 2s, Abitrum has completed their shadow fork migration on Abitrum 1 for Abitrum Nitro. Now, Nitro is coming out this week, guys. Abitrum Nitro goes live August 31st, which is very, very soon. And they say here they are planning the migration to start at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on August 4th. On August 31st, and the process is expected to take between 2 to 4 hours. So in, I guess, like US afternoon time on August 31st, you should be able to play around with Abitrum Nitro, which is super exciting, obviously. And you know what's funny? I mentioned it before, but we get Abitrum Nitro, then 2 weeks later we get the merge. It's shaping up to be a very exciting September, I think, and not to mention all the other stuff coming in September, but I'm super excited for it. But yeah, I think we just got to wait a few more days and Nitro will be live. So, speaking of things that are live, Rocket Pool's Redstone upgrade is now live on mainnet, which makes Rocket Pool merge ready. Now, you can read this blog post here it was published on June 28th that I highlighted, all about the merge and how Redstone kind of plays into that and all the upgrades that have come with Redstone here. Jasper has actually highlighted one of those upgrades, which is the smoothing pool, which I believe I talked about last time, which basically makes it more profitable to be a node operator because it smoothens out rewards. So And I think one of the major changes is that, RETH, which is the liquid staking derivative of Rocket Pool, used to have a quirk. Upon minting, it could not be moved for 24 hours. Now this is gone. RETH is now liquid as it's minted. Several big names have been waiting for this to integrate RETH. So I think they take like a small haircut here instead of in order to like prevent gaming. I think it's like a 0.05% haircut, and when you put your ETH into RETH here, in order to prevent the gaming instead of having it not move for 24 hours. And then there's the smoothing pool. So because validator earnings are notoriously spiky, weeks of barely earning anything before lucky proposals like lucky events in RuneScape, the smoothing pool balances out all returns, so you never have to worry about luck. So very, very cool upgrades that have come along with Rocket Pool Redstone. I'm super excited about this, and I'm hoping to spin up my own Rocket Pool node relatively soon. It'll be my first staking experience or staking kind of like node that isn't solo staking. Like up until this point, I've only done solo staking. I have not staked with any liquid staking provider. I have not put my ETH into a centralized exchange and staked with them. Of course, I haven't, obviously. But I now at this point in time, I think Rocket Pool has gone through the ringer enough. They've done a lot of great work. They had these major upgrades out that I would feel comfortable becoming a node operator here. So I'm very much looking forward to getting that spun up. Hopefully I can do it before the merge, but we'll see. But yeah, I guess like congrats to Rocket Pool on this amazing milestone and being merge ready. All right, so I just wanted to highlight this little tweet here from Will White, who said, I still can't get over this. A week after ETH Mexico. Functional, non-theory, not hype, hacked together for millions of IRL underbanked businesses. Crypto is a tool for releasing human potential when it's quiet, boring, and functional. And he's showing here a proof of, not proof of stake system. I was going to say proof of stake system because it's a POS system. It's a payments infrastructure system. I can't remember what it stood for. POS, point of sale system. Yes, like POS in my head is just straight proof of stake. this is a point of sale system. You can see here, it's using the Polygon POS network in order to take payments. And this goes back to what Vitalik was saying last week about cryptocurrency payments being like a super underrated use case. And I think it is. I think that Ethereum as a network, and especially the layer 2s, and especially something like the Polygon POS chain, serve as great payments infrastructure, because not only can you pay in ETH, you can pay in stablecoins. I always thought that the cryptocurrency, like the thing being an actual currency, like ETH or BTC, was always a bit flawed because it's obviously so volatile. It's not, not very stable. It doesn't really have great properties of kind of like a currency. It's got monetary properties to it. It's got monetary premium. People do use it as money, but I think that because Ethereum is home to all these stablecoins, not just USD stablecoins, but also other fiat stablecoins now, it makes for a very great point of sale system. Now, obviously, this can't be done on Ethereum layer 1, but it can be done on the Polygon POS chain or Ethereum layer 2, and then be settled to Ethereum layer 1, which I think is obviously very powerful. And as I said, it can be any token, ETH, stablecoins, whatever. It doesn't have to be limited to just one coin. Like on Bitcoin, it's just limited to BTC, which I think was holding back that payments use case. And I hope to see more of this, these kind of like payment systems be developed and released. All right, so Spruce has introduced TreeLDR, which is an open source tool that makes it easy for developers to define credentials for decentralized identity. It's released under the Apache 2.0 license. So if you are a developer, you can go check out TreeLDR, which is a canopy, which, as they're describing here, is a canopy across your data schema dreams. So I've talked about Spruce before and how they're building like sign-in with Ethereum and decentralized identity solutions. I think what they're building is very cool. I am an investor in Spruce, just a disclosure here. But if you're a developer and you want to check this out, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. I just wanted to highlight it because I know there are some developers that watch the show as well. Last couple of things to get through here. So I think actually I want to end it with that discussion. But firstly, I just wanted to say that I did a podcast which you probably saw, a YouTube video that you probably saw with Hal Press, the second episode of the Daily Gwei Drive-Through series. If you haven't watched that yet, be sure to do so. It's only about an hour long. It goes through all the stuff that Hal has been talking about lately, like the merge trade, ETH bull case, Ethereum proof of work forks. We had a really great discussion. So if you haven't watched that one yet, be sure to do so after the refuel. It'll be on the Daily Gwei channel, so you can go check it out there. All right, to end off today's episode, just wanted to have a quick discussion about this little kind of thesis that was really popular in 2020 that I think has been completely disproven at this point. Basically, there was an absolute brainlet thesis, as I call it here, called the barbell strategy, where people believed that you only needed to buy DeFi tokens and Bitcoin to outperform. Since then, ETH has destroyed DeFi tokens and has outperformed BTC by 34x. Thanks for playing. And then Pioneer actually commented here, which I thought was quite funny, where they said they must have known they'd end up with two very heavy bags on either end to name it a barbell. So I thought that was funny. But anyway, this strategy was extremely popular in 2020 because DeFi tokens were mooning, Bitcoin was going up too, and ETH was relatively stagnant. Now, this was actually quite a shitty period for a few months because of the fact that ETH was relatively stagnant. But then what ended up happening was that DeFi summer ended. DeFi just completely blew off like the top and it crashed spectacularly. Then ETH, it was at like $300 during this, started going up. And then by the end of the year, it was at 800. And then in January, it hit its all-time high again, while DeFi had just gotten absolutely crushed, completely crushed. And then ETH started gaining on BTC as well because BTC had its institutional narrative then, because Michael Saylor started buying. There was like inflation hedge narratives, all these sorts of stuff. But then ETH just started performing. Now, it's fair enough to say that ETH outperforms in a bull market against BTC because traditionally that has been true, but ETH has also performed very well during this current bear market against BTC and obviously against DeFi tokens. And it's just funny looking back and seeing how confident people were about this thesis. Whereas if you had held only DeFi tokens and BTC, you have underperformed ETH by a lot. Say you had like 50% DeFi tokens, 50% BTC, and it depends on what DeFi tokens you held. But let's say you held the best ones, the ones that performed the least worst, so to speak, and you had 50% BTC, you would have underperformed ETH by a staggering amount. Like if you had put 10 ETH in to these things, you probably would have only been able to get like at this point in time 4 to 5 ETH out, and probably even less than that. So you've underperformed ETH by a staggering amount there. And obviously, what I'm saying is an investment advice and past, action isn't indicative of future price action. But it really is amazing how much a thesis can change in 2 years. It's only been 2 years since this was like at peak popularity. I remember it was like August, September, where DeFi tokens were like going absolutely crazy, and BTC was also going up, and everyone was like, why would you hold ETH? You don't need ETH. You don't need ETH as part of your portfolio. And then at the time, I was thinking, you guys are crazy. Like, we have all these awesome catalysts coming up. We had EIP 1559. ETH was being used as money, as collateral within DeFi. We had, obviously, the issue introduction with proof of stake and all that. We just launched the Beacon Chain. We were launching the Beacon Chain on December 1st, 2020, which is the first implementation of proof of stake. So, I was thinking about all of that, and then I was like, you guys are crazy. That's why I held on to my ETH. I mean, most of the DeFi profits I made, I cashed out to ETH, and then I rode the ETH train up, which I think a lot of people did. That's why it's one of the reasons why ETH performs so well. But yeah, these days, I think no one really debates ETH's value. I think everyone debates the value of DeFi tokens and even BTC these days. But when it comes to ETH, everyone's kind of aligned on, yeah, okay, there's this massive issue introduction coming. We have EIP 1559. ETH as an asset is being used as money within NFTs, within the metaverse. It's still being used as collateral. And then the next time the bull market rolls around, Ethereum is not going to suffer from high gas fees anymore, because there's all these layer 2 solutions that are out there to scale Ethereum. So it's kind of hard to find a bear case for ETH these days, right? Like, for even the most bearish people. I'm sure the Bitcoin maximalists come up with their own garbage, but at the end of the day, I just find it very hard to come up with a logical ETH bear case. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that for today. If you want to hear more bullish thoughts on ETH, you can definitely check out the episode I did with Hal Press. But yeah, I think that's it. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.